Welcome to the Be Amazing podcast. On this show, we'll give you the fuel you need through motivational pep talks, the fitness tips to be your healthiest self, fortitude to push through the hardships, and focus you need to build the skills needed for the next level, no matter what that looks like to you. I'm your host, Cel Smart. I'm a wife, a mom, community leader, and fitness professional of over 18 years. I'm here to be your biggest cheerleader, advocate, and connector. Let's be amazing together. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Be Amazing podcast. I am here today with my guest, Brian Lafontaine. Did I say it right?
Lafontaine.
Lafontaine. Yeah. And you said it's French?
Oui, it is French.
Oui. Well, I am so excited to have you on because we actually met, it's been a year? I think we even said a year and a half, but I can't believe it's been that long. And we've seen each other on Instagram and follow each other that way.
Yes.
And so here we are today, and he's got one of the coolest, I think you have one of the coolest stories because you are you're an actor. And a real actor.
We exist. We do exist. We are real.
And he's worked on some pretty incredible shows and movies and stage and all the things. So really kind of give us who is Brian? Give us a little bit of background.
Oh my gosh.
Just a little bit of background. Just a little bit.
Okay, well, background. I mean, I'm originally from Rhode Island. I came down here for college 100 years ago. Went to Catawba College in Salisbury, North Carolina.
Yes, I know where that is.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah, Salisbury.
There you go. I went there on a very, very tiny golf scholarship way back in the late 1900s.
So you were a golfer?
Sure, we'll call it that. We'll call it that. So I grew up, I was a caddy. I wasn't a country club kid.
Okay.
From a very working class family. I worked at a golf course. That's how I picked up the game. And I really liked it. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll pursue the golf business. And somehow I finagled my way into a tiny golf scholarship at Catawba until they realized that I suck. And then, I'm not joking. My sophomore year, they kicked me off the team. They took my scholarship back and they said, we don't know where you fit into the program anymore. Wow. So that was the end of my student athletic career. And I just had all this free time on my hands all of a sudden. And I went into stand-up comedy.
Oh my gosh.
Why wouldn't I? Who doesn't do that, right? Who doesn't go from student athlete to stand-up comedy? So I did stand-up for a few years, and then that led into acting. I mean, I'm giving you the very abbreviated Reader's Digest version, but that's how it started. And 30 plus years later, here I am. I've done everything except for porn and being a wrestler. And that's only because no one's asked. So,
well, who knows?
There's still time.
There's still time. Who knows? Well, so this is really interesting to me because we didn't even talk about the fact that golf, I hadn't even talked to you about this part of the story.
Yeah.
And then, so did you have any interest in stage or acting as a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was always, I kind of a closeted actor. Ever since I was a kid, it was something that I was really, really interested in and was just fascinated by. You turn on the TV or you go to a movie and, or in the rare instance where I was able to see live theater. I wasn't exposed to it a lot when I was a kid. It was just this magical thing. It was how does that happen? How do people get to do that? And so, it was always there. It was I would love to do that. I was always drawn to storytelling in some way. I was the entertainer in my family, third of 5 kids, so middle child.
Did you perform? Did you have performances in the living room?
I did, but they were more stand-up based. It's not like I hung a bed sheet and was I'm putting on a show. Everybody sit. No, it wasn't that, And I'm going to play all the characters. I didn't do my one-man version of Christmas Carol or something like that. No, it was doing comedy because it was the tension breaker. I was the dinner table comedian, and this was in the 80s when stand-up comedy was huge, really huge. Robin Williams and Bill Cosby, when people still liked him, and Eddie Murphy came on the scene, and all those Billy Crystal, all these, extremely well-known Mount Rushmore level-worthy comedians were on fire. And I, cable was also new at the time. So all these specials were coming on and I would memorize them. And we would sit at the dinner table and have dinner and have that silent clink, 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 clink. And I would start into somebody's routine and break the tension. That's kind of where it started. But I mean, I never thought that I could actually take it anywhere. I mean, I come from the smallest state in the country. My parents were very working class people. Even if I did go to them and say, hey, I want to pursue show business or get into acting or whatever, I'm sure that their response would be like, what? We don't know how to, they wouldn't have known the first step of how to support me or encourage me or tell me where to go. It's just not something that registered as a reality, so it wasn't until I was in college when, the opportunity presented itself. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened. I didn't go to school to be an actor. I got my degree in communications. So I learned how to talk to people. When I graduated, I was qualified to work the drive-thru at Burger King. It's like, what do you do with a communications degree? And it focused primarily on speech communications. It wasn't even journalism or television or broadcasting. It was interpersonal communications and speech communication. So I'm not joking. I was qualified to speak out loud, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But how super helpful that is to what you ended up doing. Because I'm sure that's like a foundation.
Totally. I had no idea at the time. I had no idea how the two worlds would come together and one would truly bleed into the other in such a significant way. The reason why I became a communications major, because when I was still thinking I was going to work in the golf business, one of the pros that I was working with at one of the clubs where I was caddy, when it was time for me to go to college, he said, what are you going to major in? And I said, I don't know, probably business. And he said, don't do that. He said, if you want to work in this business, he's like, anybody could teach you how to sell a sweater. He said, if you're going to be giving lessons and teaching people the game and running tournaments, he's like, you're going to need to know how to talk to people. He said, so you should really think about communications. So I was like, okay. And it just so happened that the communications major at Catawba College had the least number of required hours to graduate as well. So it was the easiest path to graduation. I was like, cool, I'll do that.
Win.
Yeah. Don't have to work very hard. All I got to do is talk.
I got a degree.
Got it.
Ready to go.
Check.
So when was your first, let's go back.
Okay.
So you did comedy.
Yep.
Okay. So when did you realize that you could then do like acting? So where did that come in?
Yeah. It was right shortly after I graduated. There weren't a lot of stand-up opportunities in Charlotte at the time. This was back, and I don't know how long you've been here in Charlotte.
50 years.
You grew up here?
Yes, I'm a Charlottean.
Oh my God.
That's what I was asking you. Awesome. I was like, yeah, I'm a Charlottean. So I'm like the real deal.
Do you remember when the Comedy Zone used to be out on Independence Boulevard?
Yes.
That was the only place that you could go. That was the only stand-up opportunity around. This was before the breweries and all the other places where, all these comedy showcases are being done nowadays. It was the Comedy Zone and that was it. So there were not a lot of stand-up opportunities. My roommate that I was living with at the time, he and I graduated together and he was a theater major and he had just finished doing a production of West Side Story over at Theater Charlotte. And he said, you should go and audition for the next shows that they're doing. He's like, you'd be great. So I was, being a bum after graduating from school. And I was like, okay. So I went and auditioned, and Theater Charlotte they were doing the first and third part of a Neil Simon trilogy, if you know who Neil Simon is. Classic American playwright. He wrote The Odd Couple, Brighton Beach Memoirs, Broadway Bound, Lost in Yonkers, and Pulitzer Prize winning stuff. So they were doing the first and third part of this trilogy, Brighton Beach Memoirs and Broadway Bound, and in the middle is Biloxi Blues, which was a movie they made with Matthew Broderick. So it's basically the same cast in the same house, 8 or 9 years apart. So I went and auditioned, and I got the lead.
Did that shock you? Were you like,
yeah. I had never done a play before in my life. I didn't go to school to be an actor.
And you're going to carry the show.
Yes. Two shows. Doing one show one night, the other show the other night, and throughout the week. And then on the weekends, you do both shows on the same day. So it was unbelievable.
And you've had no acting classes at this point.
No, I took a beginning acting class in college to fulfill just the required number of hours to graduate because I had the tiniest major. I had to finish all the rest of the hours somehow. Sure, this seems easy. Let's take beginning acting. I got a C, and I was pissed. I was like, I get C's. I got a C in beginning acting. So there you go. That should tell you. I got the lead in this show, and it was these two 80-page scripts that I was responsible for memorizing and learning. And it's the shows are set up very much like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where we're in the scene, and then all of a sudden I stop and I talk to the audience, and I do this page-long monologue, and then I come back in. Do that for 2 plays in your first endeavor. It's like, welcome to the deep end. And I was enjoying. It was like, I was snorting and injecting every moment of it. And I couldn't get enough of it. It was amazing. And one night we went out, for a drink during rehearsal and things like that. And the director and I ended up being the last 2 there at the end of the night. And he was amazing. He became my mentor for the longest time. And he's the best acting coach I've ever had to this day. And he said to me, he was like, I'm going to tell you something that I've only said to 2 other people before. And he said, you should be doing this for a living. And I went to work the next day, and I went to the men's room and I threw up. Because it was just like, I couldn't keep it down anymore. That thing that was in me as a kid that wanted to do this all of a sudden was hit with this reality and this affirmation of, you should be doing this. And I just couldn't ignore it. I really couldn't, because I wanted to do it. Even when we were rehearsing, and I knew already, I was like, this is going to come to an end very soon. Then what do I do? Like, how do people walk away from this and then go back to normal life? I'm like, I don't want this to end, So when he said, you should be doing this for a living, I did. I called my parents and I was like, I'm going to become an actor. And my parents are wonderful and they're extremely supportive, but they're also very fearful. Mm-hmm. So their reaction wasn't, how dare you? It was, okay.
What?
Okay. I don't think they really said more than that, because I don't think they knew what to say. So after that, I jumped into every acting class that I could find. I auditioned for everything that I could. I said yes to everything that I could. And, it really was just learning on the job. It was baptism by fire. And I was just over the moon passionate about it and couldn't get enough of it.
You just mentioned one thing that really resonated with me. And that was, in the beginning, you said yes to everything. Mm-hmm. To everything.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm very much the same way in a lot of things I do. It's especially when you're breaking into something new or you're starting on this thing where you don't know where it's going. And it's like, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. Right. So how do you feel like that is, when you're working? Because I know that you work with people, but I know sometimes people are resistant to doing that. Like they only want to do what they want to do. So how do you think that did for you, saying yes and being willing to jump in and do all the things? Oh,
I think it did a world of good for me, because if nothing else, it just exposed me to as much as possible. And it just gave me constant opportunities to work on what I was doing. I don't care how big the audience was. I don't care whether I was getting paid or not. It was an opportunity to work on storytelling, on working on connecting with another actor and being in a scene and being present with them and giving this experience to the audience. What was the hell part of the question?
No, just the whole part of saying yes. And yes. There are people out there that don't do that might be more reserved about saying, well, I'm only going to do this. Like, I'm not going to do everything. How important is that?
It's extremely important, because no offense to those of you out here who do say no sometimes and feel that you are, either above or you don't want to do certain things. I think that limits your range and what you're exposed to, because, and it also limits your opportunities. To me, that's no different than just saying, I'm only going to do commercials. Mm-hmm. Well, then that cuts you out of all the rest of everything that's in the entertainment industry, or, put it into any profession that you want. If you're a lawyer, I'm only going to defend innocent people. Okay. I think you have a very short career, I think that applies to any profession, no matter what you do. You can apply it to what you do. Yeah. I'm only going to work with people who want to strengthen their lower body. Yeah. I think you've got to expose yourself to every facet of the profession that you're in, if for no other reason, to understand it, to have that information so that where the other people are coming from that you interact with and meet and tell stories with.
I think the other part that you said too that again resonated with me is I've always had mentors and coaches. Mm-hmm. And you talked about your
coach or
Yes.
your mentor
Yes.
that said those words to you.
Yes.
If he had not said that to you, do you think you would have had the bravery to step out and do maybe as quickly jumping in? Or do you feel like that was like,
I honestly have no idea how the story would have gone if that hadn't happened. This is where I look back on it and do wonder, well, was this fate?
mm-hmm,
Was it supposed to happen this way?
mm-hmm,
Because I did say yes. So to think about what if I would have said no, or, allowed the fear to take over. Because trust me, it was there. It was like, what does this mean? Am I moving to New York? Am I moving to LA? Am I moving to London? What does this mean now? I'm an actor. So how do I do this here in Charlotte, living in Charlotte? What does that mean? And thankfully this was part that I left out. There's a woman who was in the cast of those 2 plays with me over at Theater Charlotte, who was a local talent agent. And after working with her for 3 months, she said, you're coming with me. So they took me on right away and started submitting me for commercials and TV shows and movies and corporate stuff and voiceovers. And they're still my agent to this day. So that's how, again, it was just kind of thrown in. It was like, hey, welcome to the film and TV world. So you're doing this now too.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. It's having those people that believe in you and that like literally give you the opportunity to jump in because they see what the gift that you have. And they give you that support that you need, especially in this type of field and career, because there's so many things. Like I'm sure you go on auditions and it's like, you'll make some things, but you won't make something else.
Totally.
And having to deal with like the feelings of rejection even with the feelings of walking on a big set. I mean, you've done some big stuff. Like I went back and watched it. If you haven't seen it, it's real. You got to see it. The demo reel that shows what you've done. But like, you have definitely positioned yourself to work with like just a broad number of people and projects. And I love the fact that you're here in Charlotte, because that's what's kind of cool is it's like, usually you always hear how people have to move to the city,
right,
to where the opportunities are.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how are you able, like, maybe this is the wrong question to ask right here, but like, what about that first big project? Like, is there like one project right off the bat that's like, oh, this is when I really knew like I had made a name for myself in the industry?
Okay. Well, yes, but I'm going to change that slightly because these people watching, they don't know my name. Right. I don't have a name in the industry. I'm a very humble, self-deprecating person in show business, which is hard to come by. There's a million of us. There are. The reason why you tune in to the movies and the TV shows are to see the stars, the George Clooney's, the Julia Roberts, whoever it might be. They are the 1%. No one thinks about the rest of us that help tell the story because we're not the name above the title. But we've been in it for just as long. We worked just as hard. We went to the same schools. We had the same training programs. And we're just as passionate, and it means just as much to us. But to answer your question, it was my first real big TV gig. And I had been, all right, so I'm going to shift this a little bit. The first play that I did was extremely successful. And my story is kind of like a local overnight success story in show business. The play was really, really successful. We're talking like sold out, turning people away at the door, standing ovations. The Charlotte Observer, when newspapers were still around, did an article on me in a Rising Star series that they had. All of a sudden, I was a rising star in Charlotte. None of these things that I had ever expected. And, at the time, North Carolina was the 3rd largest movie capital in the country. So there was Los Angeles, there was New York, and then there was North Carolina. And this was back in the days when Matlock was being shot in Wilmington. And Wilmington was huge. I was on Dawson's Creek when... Oh my gosh, you were on Dawson's Creek. I was on Dawson's Creek and One Tree Hill.
Love both of those.
So there was a lot of work in the Southeast. Similarly, it's like, how do I be an actor living in Charlotte? Because there's only so much theater you can do, and you only make so much money doing theater. So I found out that there is a big film and television and commercial market here. Charlotte's a big corporate city. NASCAR's here. Bank of America's here. There were a lot more on-camera opportunities than most people would actually expect. So I was getting auditions for a lot of this stuff. And I was working really hard because there is a difference between working on stage and working on camera. When you're working on stage, you are filling the entire theater space. You're making sure that your voice hits the back of the wall so that, the 300 people in the back row can hear you. And everything's a little bit bigger and everything's a little bit broader and everything's a little bit more overemphasized because these people need to know what we're doing and what we're talking about. But when you're on camera, the camera picks up everything.
Yes, everything.
And you don't have to do nearly as much for them to be able to see what's happening. So that's a big shift in energy and focus and acting and being emotional because you want to act. And I want you to see that I'm angry or passionate or happy or whatever. And it's like, dude, we can see it. We can see every pore on your face. Pull it back. So it took a long time for me to be able to hone that technique of being able to work with the camera. So when I got my first big TV gig, which was a miniseries for HBO called From the Earth to the Moon, which was produced by Ron Howard and Tom Hanks. And it was the biggest, it won every award under the sun. And it was being shot in Florida and it was about the Apollo space program. And I was cast in one of the episodes. And when I got down there to shoot, the guy who was directing that episode was a guy named Graham Yost, who wrote the original Speed movie, and he was directing it. And the actor who was the lead actor was a guy named Matt Craven, who was another one of these guys where if you saw him, you go, oh, I've seen that guy in a million things. And there were a bunch of people in it. Alan Ruck was in it from Succession and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Grant Shode, who used to be on Murphy Brown, like all these people. So I had the opportunity to work and be around all of these actors. So when it came time to shoot my scenes, they shot my coverage first. And so Matt Craven was sitting off camera. The director was right behind him and they were doing light close-ups. And it was an emotional scene because I had broken the lunar module. I broke the LEM, the little spider thing that actually lands on the moon. So Neil Armstrong can come off and say, one small step for man. My episode was all about designing the lunar module and I was one of the engineers. And so there was kind of an emotional scene. So they were shooting my stuff and we did, a take that they really liked. And they both turned and looked at each other and said, this guy's good. They're like, we wasted him on such a small role. We should have used him for something bigger. And my head just went like it was the most, again, unexpected compliment that I could have gotten from these, true industry professionals who had had such huge success. I was a kid. This is the first thing that I had ever done. Nobody knew me. And what that said to me was, this is where you belong. This is where you should be. You did what you needed to do to get the job in the first place, and you have just as much right to be here as anybody else who's in this show. And so I walked away going, yeah, I can do this. If I did this and I got that reaction, then I need to keep going.
That's so cool. I mean, it really is.
It sounds so egocentric.
No, but it's not. I think it just shows you like when you're walking in your path or you're doing what you're meant to do, it's like it positions you in a place and will really open up the doors of opportunity. And that's what your story, it sounds like to me. Out of all of this stuff that you have done from being an actor and so far, is there one other, like, has there been like another favorite moment?
There's
probably a million. I'm sure.
There are so many. Favorite moment. Oh, geez. I there's a TV show on AMC called Turn, which turned into Turn Washington Spies. It was about the Revolutionary War. And Jamie Bell was in it, who was Billy Elliot. That's his big claim to fame. And he's done a million other things since then. And all these wonderful British actors. And I was cast as the town doctor. I was cast as Dr. Josiah Mabs. And similarly, it was this my introduction into the show was this big emotional scene where Kevin McNally, who was in all of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, he comes to me and he asks me for the gravestones of my dead wife and dead daughter to use as shields against the bullets and cannonballs that are being shot by the enemies. So, of course, who's going to go, oh yeah, take them. That's great. No, it was a big emotional scene. And I had to be a mess and whatever. And I remember driving to Richmond, Virginia for the audition, because this is when we actually went to auditions, which we don't do anymore. And so that's 4.5 hour drive in the car by myself, trying to, keep that, emotional tension going the entire time, get there early, walking around the building, because I always make sure that I give myself enough time to be there and not feel like I have to rush in the room. And then you're there in the lobby with all the other actors who are also auditioning for, whatever roles they're auditioning for. And then there's that tension where everybody's looking at each other, and you're just trying to stay focused on what you're doing. And they finally call you into the room, and the director's there and the casting director's there. And, I was so prepared and so ready, so that when they actually, started doing the scene and the casting director was reading off camera for me, I was just a mess. I was an absolute mess. And they told me after, they're like, when you walked out the door, the director said, that's him. That's the guy. And he said he went back to the network after, and they were like, well, what about the role of Dr. Babs? And they were like, he's like, no, I've got it. And they were like, there's no way you found that guy there. And he was like, I'm telling you, I got it. And they were like, okay, I guess that's him. That's the guy. So that was a great moment of finding that out, and that ended up being a recurring role where I ended up doing 4 episodes in the show. And that was my first really big opportunity to do more, to be a bigger part of the story over the course of the series. So that's definitely a special one.
That's awesome.
I interrupt this program for an important announcement. We are having the 3rd annual Celebrating Women in the Queen City event happening Monday, March 24th at Lenny Boy Brewing from 6 to 8:30 p.m. It is a night of networking, inspiration, and celebration. And we are celebrating and highlighting women in multifamily. We have 2 dynamic panels that are going to be in this live Be Amazing podcast. So you don't want to miss it. Get your tickets today. $10. Go to celiasmart.com right now. Get your ticket. Oh yeah, and guys, you're invited too. So make sure you go get your ticket today. $10. celiasmart.com. We'll see you there on the 24th. Now back to the program.
Moments where you have walked onto a set, or you walk on and there's do you ever feel intimidated?
Totally.
Because I'm just curious. I know a lot of these people would be your, you're all part of the same industry, but you're with different people most of the time when you're going to these different projects.
You're always the new guy. I'm always the new guy. I end up eating breakfast alone. I eat lunch alone. I eat dinner alone. It's a lot of time by yourself. And most people don't think about it that way. You think, oh, I'm going to get to work with whomever it may be. Yay. But you forget the fact that it's a job for them, and that they've been there since day one, and they've worked with however many other people until you showed up. And after you leave, they're going to work with however many more people after that. So while you want it to be a positive, fun, creative experience, you have to understand the dynamic and the responsibility that the stars carry, and that you're there truly just to support them. That's why it's called a supporting role. You're there to support what they're doing and to support and help push the story forward and doing your part. So when I worked on Ozark, unbelievable, amazing. Everybody in the cast was phenomenal. But if you've seen the show, it's not the happiest show on earth. Someone's getting mangled, mauled, murdered, yelled at, screamed at, in almost every scene. So to think that Laura Linney or Jason Bateman are going to be like, hey, bud, come here. Come here, man. Come tell me what's going on. No, they're thinking about how they're going to, beat the crap out of somebody in the next scene, or get the crap beat out of them in the next scene. So, you really have to learn, I'm going to be over here. You let me know when you need me. I'll be ready when it's my turn. And if there's anything more that comes out of it, and any kind of connection with whoever you're working with, it is, it's a bonus. So I was definitely intimidated, on that show, because it was the most popular show in the world at the time. And everyone on that show was a huge star. And I got to work with almost all of them. So I was definitely intimidated. I played Andrew Wade, who was a senator. And one of the episodes, they were throwing this whole fundraising event for me. I had to, what was written in the script, I had to get up and give a campaign speech in front of hundreds of extras and everybody who was there in the main cast. I mean, and they kept checking with me during the day. They were like, "You got the speech down, Brian? Are you sure you've got the speech down?" And I had the speech down. Trust me, I had it down. So yeah, think about that, where they go action and the camera's on you and you're surrounded by 200 plus people going, "Hope you don't screw this up." You know, it can be really, really intimidating. And that's where preparation, comes into play. And that's where realizing that it is a business. This is your job. This is what you are responsible for, just like anything else. It seems exciting. It seems glamorous. It seems fun. And yes, at times it is. But there's a lot of money riding on it. There's a lot of responsibility riding on it. So you've got to be prepared, and you have to be a professional. I don't know what else to say.
But what does preparation look like for you? Now that you're talking about that, I think that's another really thing that we don't all understand or maybe get, because a lot of times I guess you get a script and I don't know how many days in advance you get it.
Right.
Like, I don't know if this is like weeks, days, like.
It all varies. Sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's days. Sometimes it's, here you go. Yeah, we've just rewritten the scene. Here you go. After we relight, then we're going to shoot this. And you're going, we're sculpting this really, really quick. Oh, I'm speaking Mandarin? Great. No. It feels like that. Trust me. So preparation for me is truly, learning it. And it's beyond just memorization. Yes, learning your lines is one thing, because learning your lines can be, tell me what you had for breakfast today.
Yeah, ground turkey.
I love you. Does that sound like I was listening to you at all? No. But I had memorized, my line was, "I love you," and I knew that it came after turkey. So I wasn't in the actual moment with you. I wasn't listening to you. I wasn't paying attention.
You're just spinning a line.
Yeah, but I memorized it. Yeah, that's step number one. Step number one, acting students. Yes, learn your lines, but the reason why that's step number one, you want to get it out of the way, is because you need to figure out, okay, what's actually happening in the scene? Why am I having this conversation with you? What's my relationship to you or everybody else in there? What do I want? What's my objective? And you have to go through and break down all these things, because that's what makes it seem real. That's what makes it seem alive. And it doesn't seem like they're acting, That's what makes it seem lifelike. What you're doing is you're recreating human behavior in the most authentic way possible.
Now, does everybody, because I love this about the whole lines thing, but have you been on set where somebody goes off script and you have to roll with that? Or is it pretty strict? Like, they're pretty strict as the writers? Because I've heard different things. I'm just curious.
I haven't had too much experience with that or exposure to that. It does happen from time to time. And I am good with improvisation and things like that. My background in comedy and stand-up certainly has helped with that. So I can roll with things, and just live theater, man. When things go wrong in a live show, it's like the show must go on. That's true. So all of that stuff ends up being really, really useful if something off script happens, on camera. But usually, and again, for me, the supporting cast, it's like our job is to show up, do what's written, unless somebody tells you something different. And there are those directors that I've worked with where they've like, let's just improv. Let's improv the scene this time. Just say whatever you want to say this time. But because once you get the essence of what the scene is about, then sure, you can make it your own, and you can make the dialogue a little bit different than what's on the page, and the scene still makes sense. That's the whole point, is the scene still making sense to what's going to help push the story along in the way that we intended? So improvisation is extremely useful and helpful. It can keep things very energized and electric, because you don't know what's going to happen next, and very, very spontaneous and in the moment. Where scripted stuff, where you do it enough times and it becomes like the same thing over and over and over again, and you can get stuck in this rut. So that's why when you get the chance to work with people who get paid as much money as they do, truly that 1%, like in this movie with Chris Pine called The Contractor. And it's a scene, if you've seen the movie, it's at the beginning where he gets kicked out of the army. And I'm one of his best friends that gets him kicked out of the army. So it's them breaking the news to him that he's being booted. And I sat there and watched him do this close-up reaction over and over and over again. And no two takes were the same. No two takes were the same. But after each time they would say cut, he was like, okay, so we've got that one where I do the, and then we've got that one where I've got this, and then we got that one where it's a little bit more, introspective or whatever. And you just go, whoa, he thought about all these things so that when they go back into the editing room, they're like, well, we can go this way, we can go this way, we can go that way, we got that option. And you're like, man, that's impressive. That's impressive. Yeah.
So we've talked about your acting career and really touched on that. This kind of leads me into where you are now. You're still acting, obviously. Thankfully. So like, do you have like anything on the horizon that you can share about?
I am assistant directing a play over at Theater Charlotte right now called The Play That Goes Wrong, which opens in February. I don't know when this comes out. So that's taking up a lot of the time right now because we're rehearsing at night, which means that, I can't really leave town to go and work on other projects because you've got to be there for rehearsal. So anything that I'm doing right now is more going to be on the voiceover side of the business, which I do a lot of voiceover work. I've got the studio in my home and it's wonderful. But no, auditioning for movies and TV shows at the moment is going to be on hold until the play is open. So, and it's always the rule of thumb. Like as soon as we started rehearsals, the auditions really, I don't want to say started pouring in, but for what it's been like recently, I get like bam, 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 bam. And I had to go, no. Where were you a few months ago? So yeah, it's just so unpredictable. Yep.
So with the whole acting and your assistant directing a play, you also do a lot with speaking. Mm-hmm. And working with people to help them with professional speaking, yes. Public speaking.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about what that looks like. Mm-hmm. And when did you start that?
About 2 years ago. I mean, again, it's so connected to doing what I'm doing right now. Directing, I've been an acting coach. I've taught studio classes. I've helped other people with their performance. So when I started to think about what other things can I do with this skill set that I've acquired over the last 30 plus years of my career, public speaking, presented itself. I'm just like, because the connection between public speaking and performing in front of an audience, there's no difference. There's no blurred lines. It's the same exact thing, just with a different message and a different purpose behind it. But for most people in the corporate world, and I am generalizing, so I apologize if I'm offending anybody. Most people who present are doing just that. They're presenting. It's more of a report as opposed to an engagement with your audience. Public speaking is a visual medium. You've got to give us a reason to pay attention to you, to keep listening to you. No different than what you're doing right now, or when I'm auditioning for a TV show, or when I'm on, in a movie or in a scene. It's my job to keep you from, changing the channel. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing in a live presentation or a live performance. You've got to give me a reason to keep listening to you. So it's my job as the speaker, as the presenter, as the performer, to stay engaged with you, to keep your attention in some way. So I have to make what I'm doing about you. It's not about me. It's about them. And it's no different if you and I are acting in a scene together. Even though I'm in the scene with you, is where I'm coming from. This is about you. This isn't about me. It's not like, Cel, it's my turn to speak. Let me show you how good I am. Hold on one moment. No, it's always about your audience. And I think I know that it's really, really easy to get stuck in, well, of course it's about me. I'm the speaker. I'm the center of attention. So all this responsibility is on me. Yes, it is. But you're there for them. You're there to help them. You're there to, share a message with them. You're there to share a story with them for their benefit, not for yours, for them. So what I do when I'm working with people is to try and help shift that mindset and shift that focus of, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, even on that subject, because it doesn't take away from what you actually know and the information that you're sharing with them. It's still just as credible. It's still just as accurate as anything else. They're asking you to present and speak for a reason. It's not a mistake, and nobody's rooting against you. It's not there to make a fool out of you. You've got something that they can benefit from. So it's to help the people who are speaking and presenting to realize that and to look at it from that perspective. then it's no different than being an actor. It's like, I'm here to share this story with you, to share this moment with you, to, let you come in and share this experience with us if you and I are in the scene together.
This is interesting. I was telling you earlier that I'm in a class right now. We're finishing up this. It's called Train the Trainer class. And so I'm grouped in with all of these people, and there's 12 of us. Okay. So shout out to my class, Train the Trainer, for PTA. And that's why I thought this was so fun having you on, because like, oh my gosh, they're going to listen to this podcast. They're going to freaking love it. But right now, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it, because I think you do, when you are presenting, you tend to think of it as, I'm presenting, like it's on me. And I love what you said about the information, because like, even I've had to create like a PowerPoint, which I've never done. I've always been, had to create a PowerPoint, and it's on information I know. Right. But, we've had some different people come in and give us comments. Each one of us have had to present. To start with the 2 minutes, and then it's the 4 minutes, and then tomorrow it's going to be 8 minutes. Okay. And when I am off of script, like meaning when I don't have the notes in front of me and I just go from my heart, it's more authentic and real, and I connect with the audience. When I look at my notes, I go back to like I'm reading it. Right. And so what kind of, and you've already given us some help as far as like, if I'm presenting, to look at it like it's not about me. Right. What's another thing that you would say, like for anybody that's kind of starting to, whether it's teaching a class, like in, like at school, or whether they're going to get on stage and present something, like what's another nugget of information?
Well, it's a big nugget, and it's a very, just like it's a kind of a nugget. Preparation is huge. It's huge. It's huge. It's huge. And most people, unfortunately, in the speaking and presenting world, way underprepare. Because one, most people don't know how to do it properly. And two, it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and it can seem very tedious, and it can seem very repetitive. The best example that I can give is when I was working with a client that came to work with me privately, and she works for Duke Energy, upper level management, very inside baseball industry, technical jargon and stuff like that. So only people who work within that company are going to understand what she's talking about. And she gives these monthly meetings, or, every 2 months or something like that, runs these meetings. And when she was working with me, she was basically just reading off this bullet point sheet of like, this means this, and this is that, and we're going to start this. And I stopped her and I said, do you expect anyone to retain the information that you're spitting out right now? And she's like, no, not really. And I said, okay. I said, then why are we doing this? And she said, well, the company makes me. And I said, okay. I said, what if we could get them to retain 10% more, or 20% more, even 30% more? And she was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And I said, how often do you do these? And she said, like once a month or once every 2 months. And I said, how much time do you spend preparing? And she's like, I go over it a couple of times. And my face hit the floor. And I was like, you go over it a couple of times? And I stopped her and I said, let me put it to you this way. I said, imagine I have to do a monologue on stage in front of an audience in a performance. And it's a 1-page monologue. And I go over it a couple of times. Do you think that I'm going to be ready? No. Do you think I'm going to have anxiety? Yes. Do you think I'm going to be really, really stressed out? Yes. Do you think it's going to go well? No. It's no different. You have to be realistic about the amount of time and preparation that you need to feel comfortable standing in front of that audience, so that you can be confident, so that you can be the most authentic version of yourself, so that you can just let it go. We say this all the time in the acting world, where you want to get to the point where you can just let the scene go, let the script go, and be present. Allowing yourself to be present in the moment with your audience. That's it, man. That's the ball game. Anything that you've got on paper, any slide that you've got there, that's not what's going to stick or what's going to resonate. It's going to be you being present in the room. They came to see you, nothing else. So that's what they're going to remember when they walk out at the end. So for you to feel as prepared and as confident as you can be standing in front of them, yeah, you're still going to be nervous. Yeah, you're still going to have nervous energy. If you don't, then I think you're doing it wrong. But think about it from an athlete standpoint. The Super Bowl, nothing bigger than the Super Bowl. And they get to the end of the game, and whoever's won, and they're interviewing them after, and they say, "How did you feel before today? Were you nervous?" And and most of them say, "I wasn't nervous. I was really excited." Isn't there a lot of similarities between being nervous and being excited? Yeah. So excited nervousness is what you're looking for. Panic and anxious nervousness is what you don't. I think the excited nervousness comes from all the practice, all the reps, all the time. You can relate to this of being able to perform when you're ready to perform. And, going in there when you're not prepared, when you haven't put in those reps, when you haven't put in, that rehearsal or practice time. You can correlate and find connections between, again, any industry, any profession, any sport, any part of the entertainment industry, and connect it to presenting professionally at a corporate level.
This is awesome. This is probably one of the best podcasts I've done, because
Tell your friends.
Your friends, listen now. He'll be back. But because there's such good content here, because I know, and probably for me, it's because it's something that I'm in the middle of myself, my own journey with it, and not even sure where it's all going to go. I'm just kind of okay, next step, kind of thing. And so I don't think our connection or connecting with you is by, it was a year and a half ago, but sometimes it's just timing, and there might be other things that come along. But all of this is just is so good. How can somebody work with you? Do you teach a class? Is this one-on-one? What does that look like?
At the moment, one-on-one is the only thing that I have available, just because, again, I'm directing this play. So it's limiting what I have time to do in other ways. But there are times where I hold workshops. I do group workshops for companies and organizations. I've got some coming up after the first of the year. I hate to say this, but I'm nervous to say it, because until I do it, it still isn't real. But I am looking at starting an actual speaking group.
Awesome.
Yeah. Kind of a hybrid sort of networking / I don't want to say open mic night, but kind of similar to that, where you get to come in and it is focused around speaking. And whether it's just storytelling, you want to, you're working on a presentation, you've got a keynote that you're working on, or whatever. And you come in, you network, you schmooze, you have your drink, and then there'll be a limited number of slots that you have to sign up for ahead of time. I'll give you 5 minutes on stage to work on or tell or share whatever you want to share. We can do a little bit of feedback and, and coaching right there on the spot. And then you go back to schmoozing and exchanging business cards, and you go home.
This is a must thing. There's a lot of people that I think this would really speak to. Right.
See, no pun intended. That's one of the things that I've learned exploring the side of the business of the public speaking coaching, is that the need truly is everywhere. Everywhere. Somebody or everybody at some time is going to have to speak. You're going to have to. And most people either don't like it or, aren't very good at it. But you still don't want to waste that opportunity. Nobody likes to feel anxious. Nobody likes to feel embarrassed. Nobody likes to feel like they're not worth listening to. And I hate to think about it that way. So that's why I do this, honestly. And I know we were talking before about it's not about the money. And while, yes, it's great to get paid to do what I do because I need to keep the lights on and the roof over my head, it is truly, truly not why I do it. I have been extremely fortunate to be in the profession that I've been in and been able to work in it consistently for as long as I have. And I know what it's like to be in front of an audience and have a performance go well, or to have a moment land, or to have them come with you and share this experience with them. I know what that feels like, and it's amazing. It's amazing. So to be able to help somebody else achieve that and accomplish that, even for a moment, that's it. That's worth the price of admission for me. That's it. I've been doing this for so long that I'm certainly at that point in my career where if I can help you feel what I have felt even for a minute, I want to do it.
What else do you say? But sign me up. When are we gonna start the speaking group? So if you could leave anything with someone that is even and this goes not just for speaking, but somebody that is even pursuing acting, or somebody that has thought about it? Because there's a lot of people that are doing like the second career, like they've done this whole career and now they're ready for the next thing.
Right.
And this might be something that they've been thinking about
Right.
or pushing themselves. What would you say to someone that's even just entertaining the idea?
I'll address both at the same time. So for those who are just starting out, you're young and you're just starting out, or you are in your second career. If you're in your second career, you've got to treat it like your first career. It's no different. It's no different than opening a restaurant or becoming a lawyer or becoming a doctor or whatever. Unfortunately, there is sort of again, I'm going to generalize and say, a misguided interpretation of what being an actor is like, that you just think that, I can wake up and anybody can do it. And in some respects, there's truth to that. But if you really want to do it, then you have to treat it like a profession. It is a skill. So you've got to do the work. You've got to put in the time. You need to learn how to perform this craft, just like anything else. So take classes, audition for community theater. There's so much stuff. There's a laptop over there. I don't know if you know that, but that's why I'm pointing to the laptop. There's so much that you can find online, of course, now with Zoom and, virtual workshops are everywhere. And there's so much more available to participate in, not just, watch and download secondhand. Be a part of it actively, because putting yourself in that environment with other people, being vulnerable enough to share a part of yourself in front of other people is exactly what you need in order to take those first steps into show business. You can't do it. You can't be an actor behind closed doors. You can't do it by yourself. To connect it to public speaking, it's called public speaking for a reason. You can't do it in a room all by yourself. It needs to be done in front of an audience and with a group of people. So, yeah, get out and expose yourself to as much as you possibly can to make connections. The industry has changed considerably since when I started. If I had to start now in 2024, man, I don't know how I would do it, because we didn't have social media back then. We didn't have so much direct access to clients and directors and filmmakers and writers. They're all over the place. I mean, I hear about people getting, auditions off of X and off of Instagram. So you got to think now that the casting net, boy, this is going to be another hour behind you. So just everybody sit back and relax. We're going to be here for a while.
Buckle in.
So you got to think about how that's changed the casting net, how wide it's global now, because we have access to any person on the planet at a moment's notice. Back in the old days, we actually had to go to auditions in person. It was just whoever was there in the room. It was who was invited to that particular audition who could make it within, the drive time that necessary to make that audition happen. Now we don't go to auditions anymore. You audition at home, similar to this, with a camera, with your setup, and you upload it to a website. So that means they have access to anyone in the world. Where it used to be me against 30 people, now it's me and 1,000 people. And that's not an exaggeration. It's me and 1,000 people for every audition that I am submitted for. So do that math. To actually get booked on a job now is kind of like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why you do have to work so hard to separate yourself from everybody else. You've got to be really, really good at what you do, because how are they going to figure out we can only cast one person? We've got 1,000 to choose from. So automatically we're going to get rid of the people who didn't prepare. We're going to get rid of the people who's, set up. All these different things come into play now. So that's why you have to treat it like a business. You've got to be as professional as you can be. And that means, checking every box along the way. So it's a big ask. It's a big request. It's not to intimidate anybody who wants to pursue it, but you have to take that into consideration if you want to start to take those first steps.
Yeah, I don't even think about that with social media. Like, it didn't even register with me at first, but you're right. Like, I can't even imagine what that's like, because every time you put your video out there, you're like, you don't even know who you're up against.
Nope.
You have no idea.
Nope.
It's creepy.
Yep.
This has been such a good interview. I can't wait to share this one. So where can they find you? If they want to connect with you, they want to find you, they want to hire you, and they want you to speak.
Please do all of those things. You can find me at my website, brianlafontaine.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can just email me at brianlafontainecoaching@gmail.com.
This has been awesome. Thank you so
awesome.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Be Amazing podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please send it to someone who inspires you so they can feel amazing too. If you want to help us reach new listeners, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget, you can find the video versions of our episodes on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at the Be Amazing Podcast or DM me at Cel Smart. I'll see you in the next episode.